the first part was thinking about parental separation and families changing, and seeing through our work with young people and like people in our own lives how much of an emotional impact that has on young people, but also how so often children are not kind of given the honesty or the information that they need to navigate that sort of change in their family structure. And one of the things that, like, we talk a lot, like obviously now, like when our parents are growing up, kind of divorce has become less and less taboo and it's commonplace, you know, nobody kind of blinks an eye about it anymore, but that impact is still there on all the individuals involved in that situation. And it's not always divorce, you know, certain families aren't married and different situations change all the time, but kind of at the heart of that, looking at the kind of health and well-being of young people. And I think particularly the past few years, as a result of the pandemic, there's been like a huge, unfortunately but unsurprising, like rise in parental separation and divorce and kind of families seeking that mediation. A lot of it, I think, coming out of the rise of poverty and like job loss and stresses on families. So kind of looking at how young people, I suppose, navigate that, but looking at the importance of play and imagination and creativity in helping young people to process their emotions, and how important it is that young people are able to kind of create stories, find ways of telling their own stories and what's going on in their lives in creative ways, and imagining that with the other young people in their lives. So the kind of, I suppose, one of the other sides that came into inspiration for Sarah is Sarah's done quite a lot of work with young deaf people. She was really passionate when she was kind of learning British Sign Language and working with deaf people and kind of people who are non-verbal in developing kind of her skills in there, but also in kind of starting to understand more about deaf culture and loving deaf culture and loving kind of British Sign Language and how beautiful it is, but being really frustrated that A, they don't teach that in schools, and B, there's kind of a real gap in generations, I think, in like people who kind of use British Sign Language and access British Sign Language. And for a lot of deaf young people who are in mainstream schools, they're really isolated still. So she was looking at kind of representation of deaf children, representation of deaf people in general, and that often being really negative and kind of everybody's, you know, a victim in that process, compared with the deaf people in our lives, colleagues that we've worked with, and also the young people that she was meeting and speaking to and communicating with in schools. So I think what she wanted to do was to kind of, in thinking about communication and how young people express themselves and what they go through, looking at kind of communication in that sort of bilingual sense in two young people who don't share the same language, but that there is kind of an understanding and a want to connect. So